My family trusted my sister's lie, cast me out, and left me to rot. Now imagine having your entire life ripped apart, your own family believing a monstrous lie from your sister, disowning you and leaving you to rot. 7 years later, they came crawling back, desperate, facing homelessness, and I watched them lose everything. Let me take you back to where it all began. I'm 28 now, but I grew up in what felt like a picture-perfect, upper-middle-class world in the Chicago suburbs. My parents, from the outside, had it all figured out. My dad was a successful financial advisor, bringing in a fantastic income. My mom, a part-time realtor, was more concerned with cultivating this flawless family image, you know the type, involved in every community group, perfect Christmas card family. I was their golden child, their biological son who seemed to do everything right. Straight A's with barely a sweat, naturally athletic, always polite to adults. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't some angel. As a teenager, I got into my share of trouble, sneaking beers, throwing the occasional loud party. But it was never anything serious, never anything that would truly threaten the pristine reputation my mother guarded so fiercely. Then, when I was 10, they adopted Lily. She was 3 years old, and my mom had always dreamed of having a daughter. I remember the day they brought her home, this tiny thing with huge brown eyes, and within minutes, she had everyone utterly charmed. And yeah, I'll admit it, I was kind of a brat to her at first. Suddenly, I wasn't the center of the universe anymore. Everything shifted to Lily, her first day of preschool, her dance recitals, her latest adorable costume. Looking back, it was just classic sibling envy, but at the time, I truly felt like I'd been replaced. As we got older, I honestly thought we had a solid sibling bond. Nothing dramatic, just typical. We'd squabble sometimes, but I always looked out for her. I remember when she was in 2nd grade, some kid started yanking her hair and pushing her around on the playground. I was in 9th grade, and I walked her to elementary school one day, had a chat with that little punk. After that, nobody dared mess with her. I even taught her some basic self-defense, how to throw a proper punch if she absolutely had to. I was her big brother, you know. That's what big brothers do. By my senior year of college, I felt like I was unstoppable. I was the captain of our Division II baseball team, with real scouts eyeing me for minor league opportunities. My GPA was a solid 3.85 in business administration with a finance minor. I had an incredible group of friends, the kind who drop everything to help you move, or pick you up at 3 a.m. if your car broke down. I'd been hitting the gym hard since high school, and by then, I was in the best shape of my life. I'm talking benching 315 for reps, squatting 405, deadlifting 495. You know that V-taper everyone chases. Broad shoulders, small waist, abs year-round. Yeah, I had it. I'm not trying to brag, just paint a picture of how perfectly my life was aligning. I dated a few girls, nothing serious. My focus was squarely on my future. My dad had connections, and I was set to start a management training program at a top investment firm in Chicago right after graduation. My life plan was simple, clear. Play baseball a few more years if I could, then crush it in finance, find the right girl, get married, have kids, live the American dream. That was the plan, anyway. Meanwhile, Lily was 15, a sophomore in high school. She blossomed into this artistic theater kid, always in a play and prone to, let's just say, overreacting to everything. But hey, that's teenagers, right? She had her own friends, her own life. When I came home for breaks, we grabbed dinner, catch up on typical sibling stuff. Or so I believed. Looking back, there were so many red flags I completely missed. Her subtle jealousy whenever Mom and Dad bragged about my baseball achievements. Those little digs about how easy I had it. Her tendency to spin these elaborate, unbelievable stories about things that supposedly happen at school. But you know what they say, hindsight is 20/20ths. It was a Tuesday in October, my senior year. Coach had just run us into the ground after we'd lost a tough weekend series to our rivals. My legs were like jelly, shoulder aching in that good way that means you'd pushed your limits. I showered, threw on some sweats, and grabbed my phone on the way to my F-150, the truck my parents helped me get for my 20th birthday. That's when I saw it. 37 missed calls. 54 texts. My heart hammered. Messages flashed across the screen from family and friends. You sick? How could you? You're dead. My first thought was sheer panic. An accident. Someone died, Grandma or Grandpa. I immediately called Dad. What the hell is going on? I demanded. His voice, when he answered, was arctic. I'd never heard him like that before. Get your ass home now. Don't you dare go anywhere else. Then he hung up. I just sat there in the parking lot, staring at my phone, utterly bewildered. I tried Mom, no answer. My best friend from high school, living near my parents, ignored my call too. It was like I'd suddenly become radioactive. The 20-minute drive home was a blur, my stomach twisted in knots. NPR was on the radio, but I didn't register a single word. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Uncle Mike's truck, a few other cars. Uncle Mike, Dad's younger brother, a construction contractor with a temper, had never particularly liked me. Before I could even open my door, he charged off the porch, ripped my truck door open, grabbed my shirt, and slammed me against the side. I'm going to kill you, he roared, his face inches from mine, spit flying, smelling of alcohol. His eyes were wild, completely unhinged. I was a 22-year-old athlete in peak condition. He was 50 and out of shape. I could have easily broken free. But I was so utterly stunned I couldn't move. Dad and my other uncle, Steve, had to pull him off me. Inside. Now. Dad's voice was flat, devoid of emotion, and he wouldn't meet my gaze. I walked up the front steps into the living room. It was packed. Mom sat on the couch, face swollen, eyes red from crying. Both sets of grandparents were there, looking utterly devastated. Aunts, uncles, even close family friends. And Lily, my sister, curled up against Grandma, sobbing into her shoulder. The moment I walked in, the room fell silent. Everyone stared at me, their faces a mixture of horror and pure hatred. My blood ran cold. What the hell is going on? I yelled, my voice cracking, searching their faces for some explanation, any explanation. Mom finally looked up, her face a mask of fury and loathing I'd never witnessed. How could you? Your own sister. What are you talking about? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Dad stepped forward, his usual cool, composed financial consultant demeanor completely gone. He looked like he wanted to tear me apart with his bare hands. Lily told us everything. About how you've been coming into her room at night. For years. The words hit me like a freight train. A physical blow. I couldn't breathe. The room spun. What? That's insane. I never touched her. Lily sobbed harder now. You said no one would believe me. You said you'd hurt me if I told anyone. You said it was our secret. My disbelief turned to a blinding rage. That's a lie. I screamed. I've never said that. I've never done anything to her. What the hell is going on? Uncle Mike lunged again, barely stopped by Dad and Uncle Steve. My buddy's a cop. You're going to prison, you piece of garbage. They're gonna love you there. I tried to explain, to make them see how utterly ludicrous this all was, but it was like talking to a brick wall. No one was listening. Lily, with her dramatic flair, started remembering more details, making up things that never happened. She claimed I first touched her when she was 10, when I was home from high school for Christmas break. Countless times since, she said, that I threatened to hurt her, Mom, and Dad if she told. Every word was a fabrication, a sickening lie, but they were all nodding, comforting her, glaring at me. It felt surreal, like I'd slipped into some twisted alternate reality where everything was upside down. Then Dad snapped. He was always so controlled, never violent. But something in him shattered. He marched right up to me and delivered a right hook that would make a heavyweight boxer proud. It caught me square on the jaw. I hit the floor, tasting blood where my teeth had sliced into my cheek. Get your things and get out. You're no son of mine, he roared, standing over me, clenching and unclenching his fist. Mom had already packed some of my clothes into trash bags, sitting by the door. Dad grabbed my wallet, pulling out every single card with his name on it, credit cards, health insurance. Dad, please, this isn't true. I begged, blood dripping from my split lip. You've known me my whole life. You know I would never do something like this. He grabbed my shirt, hauled me to the door, and flung me down the front steps. I landed hard on my shoulder, felt a sickening crack, a slight separation as I'd later find out. The trash bags of clothes followed, then my baseball gear. "If you ever come near this family again, I'll kill you myself," he spat, slamming the door. I sat on the lawn, blood on my face, shoulders screaming, neighbors peeking through their windows at the commotion. My entire existence, everything I'd worked for, had just been utterly annihilated in less than an hour. That night, I sat in my truck in the baseball field parking lot, the shattered pieces of my life swirling around me. Sleep was impossible. I replayed every single horrifying moment, desperately trying to understand how Lily could do this, how my own parents could believe such an unthinkable lie without a single question. By morning, my jaw was a swollen, grotesque purple, and my shoulder screamed in agony with every slight movement. I called my teammate, Ryan, and he, bless his heart, let me crash on his couch for a week. His roommates weren't thrilled, but they tolerated me. I tried everyone in my family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, people I'd known my entire life. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. Until one cold message from my dad. "Contact us again, and I'll file a restraining order. You are no longer alive for us." Ryan kept urging me, "Dude, you have to go to the police. File a report about your dad hitting you. Get ahead of this." But I couldn't. Something inside me simply refused to accept this was real. I kept waiting, praying, for my parents to come to their senses, to see how utterly absurd it all was. And honestly, I was terrified. What if Lily didn't back down? What if they still believed her over me? How do you prove you didn't do something? How do you prove a negative? 2 weeks later, the next blow landed, an email from the university. My tuition was late. My parents had canceled it. I sprinted to the financial aid office, practically begged for an emergency loan. But with no cosigner and zero credit history, I was completely screwed. I had to drop most of my classes to part-time status, just so I could work full-time to afford what little remained. Coach, at first, was understanding. He let me stay on the team. But I missed so many practices, working security at a bar just to survive, that I barely saw any playtime. My grades plummeted from the dean's list to barely passing. Then, my friends started avoiding me. Stories, twisted and ugly, were flying. Someone in the family told someone who told someone else. You know how those rumors spread like wildfire? Nobody ever called me a predator to my face, but I saw the way people looked at me, the way conversations died when I entered a room, how girls would subtly shift away if I sat too close in class. The isolation was soul-crushing. 4 months later, my beloved truck, the F-150, died. Cracked engine block. Thousands to repair, money I didn't have. I lost my delivery job, which I'd picked up on top of the bar security. I was evicted from the rundown apartment I shared with 2 other guys because I couldn't pay my share of the rent. My bed became the baseball team's equipment shed. Coach, bless him, had quietly given me the code. I showered in the locker room, ate 1 meager meal a day at the cafeteria, scraping by on the last of my meal plan. I was truly, utterly alone. Coach found me there one bitter night in February. It was below zero outside, and I was huddled in 3 hoodies, inside a sleeping bag, using my duffel bag as a pillow. He didn't get angry. Instead, he just sat down next to me on the cold concrete floor. "Son," he asked, his voice genuine and filled with a concern I hadn't heard in months. "What the hell happened to you?" I told him everything. The accusation, my parents' brutal reaction, being cut off, losing my truck, then the apartment. Everything. He was the first person who actually listened to the whole terrible story. When I finished, he didn't accuse me of lying. He didn't say he believed me either. He just nodded, silent for a long minute. "You can stay here until the end of the semester," he finally said. "After that, we'll figure something out." The next day, he brought me a space heater and a proper air mattress. He started inviting me to dinner at his house once a week, and his wife would always pack me a doggy bag of leftovers. It wasn't much, but it was something. Someone cared. I limped through the rest of the year, barely avoiding academic probation with a 2.1 GPA. But I was done with baseball. The fire, the passion, it was completely extinguished. Coach, still looking out for me, set me up with a summer job at a wilderness program for troubled kids in Colorado. Ironic, right? But it paid cash, offered shelter in a staff cabin, and kept me fed. That fall, I didn't go back to school. I stayed with the wilderness program, becoming a full-time guide. My days were spent hiking mountains, teaching survival skills to wealthy kids whose parents had no idea what else to do with them. I rebuilt myself physically, carrying 50-pound loads up mountains, chopping wood, building shelters. I gained 15 pounds of pure muscle in 6 months. But at night, I'd get blackout drunk with the other guides. On days off, I experimented with anything I could get my hands on: cannabis, LSD, mushrooms, coke. I wasn't cautious, I didn't care. I was desperately trying to numb myself to the raw, crushing truth that my old life was gone, utterly vanished forever. Then, a guide died in a climbing mishap. A mishap I could have potentially avoided if I hadn't been nursing a brutal hangover. The program director pulled me aside. "Jake," he said, his face etched with disappointment. "You're one of our best guides. When you're on, the kids respect you. You're a natural in the field. But you're a liability like this. I can't have you responsible for kids' lives when you're self-destructing." I was fired the next day. By the way, if you're still with me through this unbelievable journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button. More stories of resilience and betrayal are coming your way. I spent the next year living out of my new beater car, a beat-up 1998 Honda Civic I'd bought for $1,200 cash. I bounced between jobs: bar bouncer, event security, day labor, construction. Anything that exploited my size, where no one asked too many questions about my past. I avoided women entirely. I avoided families. Seriously, I would physically leave a restaurant if a child sat too close to my table. The paralyzing fear of being implicated again, of having my life shattered again, was crippling. I was haunted by nightmares of prison, of inmates finding out what I was supposedly in for. I'd wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding so hard I thought I was having a heart attack. One night, working security at a college pub in Fort Collins, I recognized a guy from my old university. He played football. He recognized me, too. He started spreading rumors to his friends, telling them who I was, what I'd been accused of. By the end of the night, they were all staring, making comments loud enough for me to hear. "Predator. Sick. Someone should teach him a lesson." I tried to ignore it, focused on my job. At 2 a.m., I was escorting the last few guests out, walking to my car, when they ambushed me in the parking lot. 3 guys from earlier, they'd been waiting. They hurled insults. Pedophile. Predator. They snarled they'd make sure I couldn't hurt anyone else. I fought back, landed some solid punches, definitely broke one guy's nose, but it was 3-on-1, and they had the element of surprise. I ended up with 3 broken ribs, a cracked eye socket, a dislocated shoulder, and a concussion. The guy with the broken nose must have freaked out because they bolted when another car pulled into the lot. The driver called an ambulance. I spent 2 nights in the hospital, then was released with absolutely nowhere to go. No health insurance, a $17,000 medical bill I couldn't pay. The pain meds barely touched the agony. I couldn't work because of my injuries. I slept in my Civic, parking in Walmart lots, taking sponge baths in gas station bathrooms whenever I could lift my arms. I decided I was finished. Utterly, completely finished. It was the middle of the night, raining. I drove to an old bridge outside of town, high enough for what I had in mind. Parked my Civic, walked to the center, and climbed over the railing. My broken ribs screamed with every movement. I don't know how long I stood there, rain soaking me, staring down at the black, churning water. I had my phone in my hand. No texts, no calls, not for 3 years. My family's silence had been absolute. Nobody was coming to save me. Nobody cared if I lived or died. Bit cold for a swim, don't you think? The voice startled me, so badly I nearly slipped. I gripped the railing with my good arm, a fresh wave of agony coursing through my fractured ribs. I turned to see an elderly man, probably in his 70s, standing there in a raincoat, holding a fishing rod. "Go away," I mumbled, my voice raw and trembling. "Can't do that, son," he said calmly, as if we were just chatting on a beautiful day. "See, if I go away and you jump, that makes me responsible in a way. It's not your problem anymore. It became my problem when I saw you. That's how life works." He moved closer, not threateningly, but with a quiet, steady resolve. "My name's Frank, retired Marine Corps. Seen plenty of men at their breaking point. You want to tell me what's got you standing on the wrong side of this railing? You wouldn't understand. Try me. I don't know why, but I told him everything. The accusation, getting thrown out, the hell of the last 3 years. Maybe it was because I figured I'd be dead soon anyway. Perhaps because he was a stranger who didn't immediately look at me like a monster. Maybe because something in his eyes reminded me of my grandfather, the only person in my family who might have believed me if he hadn't been suffering from dementia. When I finished, he just nodded, exactly like my old coach did. Then he said something I will never, ever forget. Son, you've been carrying this alone long enough. Put down the weight for one night. Come have a hot meal, dry clothes, and we'll talk about it with clear heads tomorrow. Why would you help someone like me? You don't even know if I'm telling the truth. Frank's eyes were sharp, even in the dim light. Been reading men's faces for 50 years, in combat and in peace. You're either telling the truth, or you're the best damn liar I've ever met. Either way, death is permanent. Food isn't. I could have ignored him. Could have jumped anyway. Sometimes, I still wonder why I didn't. But something about his conviction, his rock-solid calm in the face of my storm, compelled me. I slowly, painfully, climbed back over that rail. Frank's home was small, but every single thing was meticulously tidy, military precise. Books aligned on shelves, shoes perfectly parallel by the door. He gave me dry clothes that had belonged to his son, who died in Afghanistan 10 years prior. He made me take a long, hot shower while he cooked. That night, I slept on Frank's couch. Truly slept, for what felt like the first time in years. The next morning, he made me breakfast, eggs, bacon, coffee so strong it could wake the dead. Then, he offered me a job. He owned a small security agency, specializing in executive protection, event security, high-end clients. We need a young, strong guy who can follow orders and keep his mouth shut. I stared at him. Why would you trust me with something like that? You just met me. I was about to kill myself. Frank looked me dead in the eyes. Because a man pushed to the edge who chooses to step back has something worth living for, even if he doesn't know it yet. And because if you screw me over, I know exactly how to find you. For the next 6 months, I lived in Frank's guest room, working for his company. He was a hard ass for sure. 5 a.m. workouts, strict rules, absolutely no alcohol on work nights. He made me see a doctor for my injuries and paid the bills himself, saying I'd repay him once I was on my feet. But he was fair. He paid me well, taught me about finance, investing, how to dress, how to interact with clients, how to be professional again. He also insisted I see a therapist, an old Vietnam vet friend of his who specialized in PTSD. I fought him on it at first. You got your bell rung, son, Frank said unwavering. Not just physically. You need to get your head straight if you're going to work for me. That therapy was a lifeline. Slowly, it taught me that what happened wasn't my fault, that I didn't deserve it, and that I wasn't irreparably broken. After 6 months, I'd saved enough to buy my own place, a tiny apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Clean. Safe. I started taking business management courses at community college, along with specialized security certifications. Frank, in so many ways, had become the father I'd lost. He never once pressured me to contact my family, never suggested I try to clear my name. He just said, some battles aren't worth fighting. Focus on the war. Build a life they can't take away from you. A year into working for Frank, he assigned me to oversee security for his niece's art gallery opening. He claimed it was a favor for his sister, but looking back, I know he was playing matchmaker. Sophie wasn't what I expected at all. Frank had described her as smart as a whip and doesn't take crap from anyone, which was true, but utterly incomplete. She was attractive in an unconventional way, tall, athletic, with bright green eyes that seemed to see right through you. Dark hair cut in an asymmetrical style that framed her features elegantly. Not magazine cover beautiful, but stunning in the way she commanded attention just by being there. We didn't exactly hit it off right away. She assumed I was just some muscle-bound security guard with no brains. I assumed she was a stuck-up art snob. During the event, I overheard her explaining an abstract painting to a potential client, then rolling her eyes when they left without buying. Not everyone gets it, I said, not really intending to start a conversation. She looked me up and down, taking in my security suit. And you do. Not really, I replied. But I'm not pretending to either. She almost smiled. Honesty. Refreshing. Throughout the night, I noticed her watching me, not in a make sure the security guy isn't stealing anything way, but with genuine interest. I was just doing my job, scanning the room, checking doors, keeping an eye on the pricey art. Professional, alert, but inconspicuous. As the night wound down and the last guests were leaving, she approached me. So, Uncle Frank says, you're more than just the muscle. Your uncle talks too much, I deadpanned. She laughed. A genuine, warm laugh, utterly different from the polite, phony chuckles I'd heard all evening. Actually, he barely talks at all, which is why, when he does, people listen. He says you're going to school. Business management, yeah. Plus some specialized security certifications. Interesting combination, she mused. Tell me about it. We talked until 2 a.m. About everything, it seemed, except my past. She was brilliant, witty, challenging in all the right ways. She traveled extensively, had strong opinions on art, politics, and music, but she also truly listened to my point of view. When I finally explained I had to leave for an early training session with a new client, she handed me her card. I have a security issue at my condo. Locks need upgrading. Maybe you could give me a consultation. It was a transparent excuse, and I accepted it. That consultation quickly evolved into dinner, then movie nights, then entire weekends together. Sophie was utterly unlike anyone I'd ever dated. Fiercely independent, incredibly dedicated to her art, but with a quiet vulnerability I recognized. She'd been hurt, not in the same way I had, but pain recognizes pain, you know? 4 months, I avoided talking about my family. When she asked, I'd make up hazy stories. My parents died in a car crash. I was an only child. Sophie sensed I was hiding something, but she never pushed. Then Frank intervened. That girl is falling for you, Jake, he said one day at work as we prepped security for an event. And you're falling for her. She deserves the truth before it goes any further. He was right. So one evening over dinner at my apartment, I told her everything. The entire horrific story. I expected her to leave, to look at me with doubt, to wonder if Lily hadn't been lying after all. Instead, she just reached across the table, took my hand, and said, Thank you for trusting me. I believe you. Except for Frank, no one else had ever said those 3 simple words to me. I broke down right there at the dinner table, sobbing like a child. She just held me, letting me release 7 years of pent-up trauma. 2 years after we met, I proposed. Down on one knee, in the exact spot of our first real date, ring in hand, heart pounding. Frank walked her down the aisle, since her own father had passed years ago. We bought a little house in a quiet neighborhood, started building a real life together. I finished my degree, became a partner in Frank's firm. We expanded from local security to regional, and eventually, national contracts, building a reputation for professionalism and absolute confidentiality. Sophie's art career took off. Her work displayed in major galleries, fetching impressive prices. We talked about starting a family. I was finally happy. Finally at ease. The nightmares became less frequent. I could be near children without that gut-wrenching panic. I even reconnected with a few old college friends who'd reached out after hearing bits of a true story through mutual acquaintances. My past life felt distant, almost like it had happened to someone else. Still, I thought about my family. I wondered if they'd ever doubted Lily's story, if they ever regretted what they'd done. But I had accepted that chapter as closed. I had a new family now, people who had chosen me, supported me. That was enough. Or so I thought. It was a random Tuesday in March. I was in my office, reviewing security protocols for an upcoming client event, a billionaire tech CEO visiting for a conference, needing discreet protection. My assistant buzzed me. Sir, you have a call on line 1. Woman wouldn't give her name, but says it's a family emergency. My first thought was Sophie or Frank. Put her through. I picked up the receiver. Hello, this is Jake. My chosen name, not my true one. Silence. Then a choke sob. Jake, it's its mom. My entire body went rigid. I hadn't heard her voice in 7 years. Every instinct screamed at me to hang up, to shout, to unleash all the years of pain. Instead, I just said, my voice eerily calm, What do you want? Please, Don't hang up, she begged. We need to talk to you. It's important. We haven't spoken in 7 years, I stated, my voice like ice. Nothing could be that important. Then she said it. The words that stopped my world. Lily confessed. She lied about everything. She made it all up. 7 years of suffering. 7 years of starting over, of crushing panic attacks, of grueling therapy. All because of a monstrous lie. I knew it was a lie, deep in my soul, but hearing her acknowledge it, the validation, even in that moment, was staggering. Jake, are you there? I hung up. I walked out of my office, told my assistant to cancel all my meetings, and drove straight to Frank's house. After I told him, he just nodded, his gaze unwavering. What do you want to do? He asked. I don't know, I confessed. Yes, you do, he replied, his voice soft but firm. You just don't know if it's the right thing. He was right. Part of me wanted to simply ignore them, keep them out of my life forever. Another part, a raw, aching part, demanded answers. I needed to hear the truth, face to face. Sophie felt the same way when I told her that night. You need closure, she explained, holding my hand. But whatever you decide, I'm with you. And Jake, this changes nothing between us. I'm still here no matter what. For 2 weeks, I ignored the flood of calls and texts that started pouring in from Mom, Dad, and even relatives who had cut me off years ago. I talked it all out with my therapist. Yeah, I've got one, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Finally, I knew I had to confront them, but it had to be on my terms. I texted my mother. Public place. Coffee shop on Main Street. Sunday, 2 p.m. Just you, Dad, and Lily. I'll have people with me. Only one chance. Sunday arrived, heavy with a sense of dread and anticipation. Frank, my unwavering rock, insisted on coming as backup. Sophie was right by my side, her hand gripping mine so tightly it almost ached, a silent anchor. We got there early, taking a corner table so I could scan all entrances and exits, an old security habit that's permanently etched into me. My stomach was a tight knot. Part of me still expected them not to show, or for this to be some elaborate, cruel trick. Sophie kept checking on me, her eyes filled with anxiety. We can leave any time, okay? Just say the word. Precisely at 2 o'clock, they walked in. Mom looked so much older than I remembered. Her hair, now more gray than brown, her face deeply creased with worry. Dad had lost so much weight, he looked gaunt, his expensive suits replaced by worn khakis and a faded button-down. And Lily, now 22, was a shadow of the theatrical teenager I recalled. Her face was thinner, eyes downcast, completely devoid of her usual dramatic flair. When Mom saw me, her eyes welled up, and she rushed forward, arms wide for a hug. I instinctively took a step back, subtly placing Sophie between us. Sit! No one spoke for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Son, I'm not your son. I cut him off, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil raging inside. You made that perfectly clear 7 years ago. Now talk. Why am I here? Mom openly sobbed. Dad looked utterly broken. Lily still stared at the floor. 3 months ago, Dad began, his voice tight, barely a whisper. Lily called a family meeting. She said that she had lied about everything. I looked at Lily. Look at me. Slowly, hesitantly, her crimson, tear-filled eyes met mine. Why? My voice didn't sound like my own. It was so raw. She drew a shaky breath. I was jealous. You were the perfect son. Everyone adored you, the star athlete, the brilliant student. Mom and Dad gave you everything. I wanted them to love me more, to pay attention to me. So you accused me of something that could have landed me in prison, destroyed my entire life. The anger I thought I'd buried years ago surged back, hot and bitter. I didn't think it would go that far, she mumbled, her voice barely audible. I figured they'd just be mad at you, maybe ground you. But then everyone started asking questions, and I couldn't take it back. And then it just kept going. Everyone was so sweet to me, giving me things, making me feel special. I didn't know how to stop it. And you too. I turned to my parents, my gaze sweeping over their guilt-ridden faces. You kicked me out without even listening to me. Without a shred of proof. Dad tried to explain, his voice pleading. We thought we were protecting her. She was our little girl, and you were our son. I slammed my hand on the table. The entire coffee shop went silent. People at neighboring tables pretended not to listen, but every ear in the room was strained. I wasn't even home for the 4th of July weekend. She claimed it happened. I stated, my voice echoing. I was at a baseball tournament in Denver, and there were pictures all over social media. Did you even bother to check? Mom gasped, clamping a hand over her mouth. Dad went pale. You know what happened after you threw me out. I pressed on, relentless. My truck broke down. I lost my apartment. I ended up sleeping in a baseball equipment shed. I almost died from exposure, from being beaten up by people who heard your precious rumors. I stood on a bridge, ready to jump, because the family who was supposed to love me believed the absolute worst without a single question. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my photos. I showed them images of my black eye and split lip from that brutal bar brawl. Pictures of myself, gaunt and hollow, from my time being homeless. My hospital documents from the beating. I was your son. My voice finally cracked. Sophie squeezed my hand fiercely. Frank placed a grounding hand on my shoulder. We're so sorry, Jake, Mom choked out, tears streaming down her face. We made a terrible mistake. We want to make it right. Make it right. I chuckled, a hollow, bitter sound. How exactly do you plan to do that? Can you give me back 7 years of my life? Can you erase the nightmares? Undo the trauma of being homeless, of being beaten senseless, of standing on that bridge ready to die? Mom was sobbing uncontrollably now. Dad seemed to have aged 10 years in the last 5 minutes. We want you to come home, he pleaded, his voice barely audible. We want our family back together. That's not going to happen, I stated definitive. I already have a family. I looked at Sophie, then at Frank, the people who had actually stood by me. Lily finally spoke up, her voice small. There's something else you should know. She explained how, after her confession, their lives had unraveled. My parents had cut her off financially, sold the BMW they bought her for her 16th birthday. While I was sleeping in my truck, remember? She'd had to drop out of her pricey private university, was working retail, and taking night classes at a community college. Dad's business had suffered from bad investments, forcing them to downsize from their big house to a cramped condo. Mom's carefully cultivated social standing in town was utterly ruined when word of Lily's deception finally spread. We need your help, Jake, Mom admitted, finally looking genuinely embarrassed, defeated. Your father's business is failing. We're going to lose the condo. Lily can't afford to continue school. We've had to sell almost everything. So there it was. They didn't want forgiveness. They wanted money. I couldn't help it. A laugh bubbled up, cold and incredulous. Let me get this straight. You destroy my life. You disown me. You leave me homeless. And now that I've managed to build a successful life despite you, you want me to bail you out? We're family, Dad murmured softly. No, we're not. I stood up. You made your choice 7 years ago. Now you can live with it. Please, Lily implored, fresh tears streaking her cheeks. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but Mom and Dad shouldn't suffer for my mistake. You're right, I said, looking directly at my parents. They should suffer for their mistake. I forgive Lily. She was a child who made a terrible, misguided choice. But you too. You were adults. You should have protected both your children. Instead, you threw one away without a second thought. I placed enough money on the table to cover our coffees. As we turned to leave, Mom grabbed my arm, her grip desperate. Please, don't leave it like this. What can we do? What do you want from us? I gazed at her for a long, hard moment. I want you to remember how it feels to have everything taken away. To feel helpless. To have no one believe in you. Maybe then you'll finally understand what you did to me. Sophie, Frank, and I walked out. As we approached the car, Frank squeezed my shoulder, his voice thick with emotion. Proud of you, son. That confrontation happened 2 years ago. Through mutual acquaintances, I've heard that my parents did lose their condo. My dad now works in a big box store, and my mom cleans houses. Lily dropped out of school entirely and moved to another state, disappearing from our lives. Sometimes, I still consider reaching out. Sophie believes that true forgiveness would be the final step in my healing, not for their benefit, but for my own peace. Frank, ever the pragmatist, says it's my decision, and he'll support me either way. For now, my primary focus is on the family I've chosen, the one I've built. Sophie is pregnant with our first child, a little boy due in a few months. We're expanding the security firm to 3 more states, creating something real, something that can't be taken away from us. Lily was 15, not 5, when she chose to lie, old enough to understand the gravity of what she was doing. And she let me suffer for 7 brutal years, before finally coming clean. Maybe someday, I'll be ready to contact her. Just not yet. And for my parents, will they ever meet their grandchild? Honestly, I don't know. Will they be in the delivery room? Absolutely not. Will they ever babysit? Hell no. But maybe, just maybe, supervised visits could happen eventually, when I'm confident they won't poison my child against me with further falsehoods. And only if they've had significant therapy and genuinely accept full responsibility for what they did. This story, this nightmare, has been my reality, and it has shaped me into the man I am today. Now I have a question for all of you watching. What would you have done in my place? Would you have helped them? Or would you have stood firm, just as I did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm truly curious to hear what you think.